Cool.
Steve, welcome. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Thanks, I'm doing great. It's a new sunny week in Barcelona, so all is going great. How about you?
I'm doing well, thanks. It's not sunny in London. It's the typical grey London
Yes.
today, but it's not as cold as it was at some point last week. So I'm happy about that. Thank you so much for joining me. I came across you via LinkedIn and also a mutual friend and colleague, and I thought you'd be a very interesting person to speak with. I want to subtitle this episode Ascertaining Confidence in SEO. And being someone who's in a senior position, I thought you'd be a perfect person to speak with. So I have like 5 or so topics I want to go through. I want to go through your background in SEO, ascertaining confidence in SEO as a main topic, managing operations as SEO operations, and SEO community at large, and then we'll finish off with the year ahead for you. So if that is all good, we can go ahead and start from the very beginning, as I like to do with all my SEO guests. I like to ask them how they became an SEO professional. So with that said, how did you become an SEO professional?
Cool, those are nice topics. So I started in SEO while in university. I was studying marketing back in the days, and I came across growth hacking as a concept from overhearing a conversation of a classmate and one of our teachers, and since then I kind of found, my way through it. Googled a few things and so on, and I created my first very own websites, which they didn't rank very well, I have to admit, but that served me to learn a bit what SEO what really was.
Mm-hmm.
And since then I kind of started gaining more expertise, and I found my first job as a SEO kind of as a half intern, half specialist a few years ago, and since then I have been growing. But let's say that my roots are from learning in university, while in university, and then having the opportunity to move that, let's say, hobby to the professional side.
I see you've also taught at several universities. Are you finding that SEO is becoming more of a main topic at universities these days?
Well, I think they have no choice but to actually bring more attention to topics such as SEO, because generally speaking, SEO, or let's say digital marketing, is kind of every time more important than the day before, no? So I think in my case, the university degree that I did actually already contained some kind of digital marketing stuff, quite a lot of it, but I think it was a bit more focused in the social media side than SEO. But I can see that these days both marketing degrees or even journalism degrees, at least in Spain, they contain more kind of topics around SEO or digital marketing, which is great, because if you are teaching it like 10 years ago, I think the cultural shock will be huge, when going to work. You will not be very up to date with the real practices.
Yeah, that's the thing about teaching SEO at universities. It's very difficult, I presume, to stay up to date with the latest. I mean, if they're teaching SEO of today, in 5 years' time, it'll be very different. So that's an area that I think universities will struggle with. Even though I do see SEO becoming more of a main topic at universities, I think for the time being, it will most likely stay as modules within a bigger degree, either digital marketing or even like social media, for example, bunched up with social media.
Yeah, definitely. I think the risk is to not actually like teach it. So I think just having something is great. And also I think it's better to teach the roots rather than the latest trends. I think that generally makes it way more kind of scalable, no? Because if you, I think, well, let's say that the roots of SEO haven't changed in like, I don't know, what, 15 years, 20 years? Because I mean, we're really doing the same, but then in the surface, there is a few different things like, oh, new schema or something. But I think if you focus on teaching the roots, that will prevail quite a lot over time.
Yeah, agreed. I see you have both agency and client-side experience. I'm always curious when I see someone who's worked both sides. Which do you prefer?
Well, that one is easy to guess because I have worked for, I don't know, 6 years in client side and 1 year in an agency. So I guess it's easy to guess which one I prefer. But generally speaking, I think agencies are great to start with. And I'm really kind of happy to have been able to work in an agency when I started. And that gave me insight into different industries, different types of clients, different ways of working. But I think I prefer to work on the client side more, like, not because of, let's say, the industry being kind of fixed, because actually I'm quite curious. So I think that part is maybe one of the parts I miss more, but because I like to do more end-to-end work. So in the agencies, you generally are more like an external or outsider person within a company, so you provide recommendations and usually they are not implemented, while in the client side you can actually carry projects end to end, make sure that there is a culture of SEO within that company and things are rooted down in the organization rather than, I don't know, some kind of random document someone did and no one cares about, which, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean every client takes it like this, but at least in my case, since I worked at a very large agency, the clients were, not seeing SEO as very strategic, so that made it quite complicated to be successful.
Yeah, totally agree. Now, speaking of end-to-end of SEO, from strategy to implementation, let's get on to how one attains confidence in SEO from the business. And let's start with budgeting. What is it like in the very beginning, right? Trying to get budget for SEO when other departments, let's say PPC, for example, can show a very clear ROI to SEO compared to SEO.
Yeah, it's indeed a tricky one, and I think it comes down a bit again to the culture in the company and how you set up the understanding of SEO. I can tell you that when I joined at Evinta, the SEO budget was extremely small. Like, it's something that I could even pay almost from my own money, because it was so small that literally I could even pay it without too much difficulty. So I think when you're in those situations, it's always a bit tricky because it's kind of a green field and you need to decide your next steps. Well, if you are in a very well set company, usually keeping your budget at least as is, it's not kind of a very difficult thing, at least in my experience. So I think there, I have used a few different mechanisms, and I mean, I wouldn't like to simplify it too much, but the general, let's say, rule that I follow is that, in my understanding, SEO and SEM, or paid search and organic search, are basically coming from the same search results, right? There is no two separate search engine page results. So therefore, you can compare the traffic between the two in order for you to put value to what you do in SEO. So typically in a company that is generally well established, you have two types of traffic. One is brand traffic and the other is what we would call non-brand SEO or traffic. And you could go to your AdWords, Google Ads campaigns and check what is your average CPC for those two types of campaigns. And you could kind of easily multiply the traffic that you get from organic search on those two buckets by the average CPC that could give you a high level estimation of how much money it would cost to buy your organic search traffic. I mean, this is not perfectly accurate, but it gives you already a hint towards, okay, how much value are you already generating? Then from there, you can be very creative. You could kind of do the typical forecasting and see, okay, if I invest more, then I will get a bigger chunk of this traffic, which could be this X value or Y value if we invest this other amount. And that gives you some kind of baseline conversations going on. I don't think it's very structured, and every business is a bit different, and also the way people understand things, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it's not a company that invests too much in SEM, so then you know that doesn't work as a comparison tool. But I think benchmarking activities such as this one are usually great to start speaking with business people and executives, because that is what they like the most, you know, saving money, making more money, or having less costs. Yeah. And I think SEO can help with all of them if done properly. So this is a bit what I tried to do. In my specific case, I think I was a bit lucky, and I was able to follow a few internal trends and conversations that were happening, and I was able to position SEO overnight at a huge, increase at some point. But otherwise, I would say also kind of more like linear growth makes sense to kind of pursue, year over year to gain more confidence, show results, gain more confidence, and so on.
Yeah, it's always a difficult thing in the beginning, right? But after you reach a point where it's not difficult anymore, it's actually very quite, when people see the value of SEO, it becomes very much a case of, okay, give all the budget to SEO. It's not an upwards battle anymore. It becomes quite straightforward. But all of that comes with a certain awareness of SEO that business leadership kind of needs to know. What level of awareness of SEO do you think a business leader requires?
That's a great question, and not an easy one to answer. I think the larger the company becomes, the more difficult it is for you to keep everyone informed. At Adevinta, we take that very seriously because we're a fairly large organization of around 7,000 people. And I mean, definitely not everyone needs to know all the details, or even some people don't need to probably know too much about SEO. But we take it quite seriously. If we start from the leadership, I think like the kind of important part for me is that people in the leadership understand what SEO is conceptually, like what do you do more or less, in terms of like you usually do product improvements or technical SEO improvements or content SEO topics to boost your kind of traffic, that it takes time, and also it's not immediate, and also it's not fully controllable, and that it's an important and strategic channel for us to invest to further grow. Apart from that, I think it depends really on the interests of the people. I think you cannot force too much, like people knowing way more or way less than this, because some people will inherently kind of be very interested in, getting to know more, and they will ask for, I don't know, some kind of recommendation of what to read or where to get more information or get some kind of training. Even in leadership roles, or other people will simply not care too much. In large companies, these kind of things are typically driven by incentives, and it's interesting to know what incentivizes people in their day-to-days. So let's say that you're a general manager, and the primary focus on what you are measured by is driving sales, but your scope is mostly sales teams, then probably SEO, it's not going to be super interesting to you, because your work is very operational in sales teams and driving them. So that generally, maybe it's not something that you can like do too much. Then maybe if you're a CMO, like you're super interested in organic search traffic because people measure you by traffic, but you don't have the drivers, which is the product and tech teams, to do changes. So you cannot actually make the changes you would like. So maybe you are not the right person to talk to either, but you can be a sponsor to what I'm trying to fight for. And then you might actually end up talking to a CTO or a CPO, and those guys, they are not extremely interested in terms of what SEO is, but they have the keys to achieving the growth that you would like to do and have the resources. So usually it's about reading a bit who has interest in which thing and taking it from there to achieve the growth that you want.
Yeah, I find that when there is no issues, that's when it's more difficult. But when there is an issue, let's say a ranking or an algorithm update, that's when everyone is super interested in hearing what SEO has to say. And I find that it's always the case that there's everyone's open to SEO when there is an issue, but it's actually better to be open to SEO before there is an issue, right? Because then you're preventing something from happening rather than reacting to something that's already happened. And finding that balance is it's not as straightforward, especially with people across several departments, whether it's leadership or even heads of departments. When it comes to, let's say, tech data, how can this be presented to business leadership in a more interesting manner rather than, let's say, just tables or information from a ranking tool?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. In our case, well, we do have different ways, right, to present data, and usually the worst way to present data is by pasting some screenshots or automating a dashboard delivery. That usually doesn't work very much, at least with the majority of the public. For example, in our case, we do have an internal newsletter that we send monthly to a big chunk of the company, where we share different things that we believe to be strategic, from our traffic trends to we share even some status, or we do a kind of outline of what's going on in our websites, and also we share industry news or even tools sometimes that we feel they could be interesting to different parts of the population. So I would say that finding like one more layer to show the data is important, because data in itself can be a bit vague, like if you don't interpret it, if you don't share it in a presentable way. So I think it's important to find those ways of communicating more effectively to achieve the results that you are more interested in actually achieving.
Now, all of this sounds as though it really requires SEO to be well streamlined within a business, right? So the management of SEO is important. Now, business leaders have a very, let's say, investment-led mindset. They invest in SEO and they almost sort of like expect results immediately. What would you say business leaders, what sort of confidence do business require when it comes to the operations of SEO? Let's say the newsletter, for example, that you mentioned. Having SEO provide a newsletter to the business, that's quite a big achievement in my opinion, because that's something that requires the business to have confidence in SEO in the first place. So how is something like that achieved where SEO is quite prominent across a business?
Yeah, well, I guess to be honest, prominence is a complicated topic, because it's always relative, right? So if it's relative to your own company or to other companies, if we were to measure prominence of SEO relative to our own company, maybe we would be pretty small because of the number of people in the total organization versus in SEO. But of course, if you compare it to other companies that are much smaller, probably we're kind of a larger organization. But I think it really depends on how you look at these things. It's not like a very, very clear one. But I think when talking to the business, it's always important to keep in mind incentives and drivers. And basically from there, you can map out who is the right person to talk to and what does this person care about. In our case, I think, well, in general, I always like to think that the best way to lead is to lead by example. And we have invested a significant amount of time in the past to drive results before actually we ask for more stuff. So like we just get like, let's say, an initial amount of resources to achieve something, and then we overachieve what we wanted to do. And from there we can ask for more. And kind of the business case generally builds very easily because you promised something which was already attractive, but you over-delivered. So then it's easy to ask for more rather than the reverse, no? Which is like a bad place to be in. If you ask for something, you don't achieve it and you want even more, then that's generally not a very good negotiation place to be in.
Yeah, it requires a certain amount of like a political suaveness, I find, because let's say heads of department, let's say the technical department, for example, developers having SEO reports for developers, you kind of need them to have a certain amount of interest in SEO. So they have to almost feel like they have a stake in the performance of SEO. And achieving that is a huge milestone. And once achieved, it becomes a lot easier to request stuff. Let's say time for development work, for example. These are things that I find very effective, I think, in terms of for SEO to be as profitable as it should be. I want to come on to SEO community as a whole. There's so much to absorb in SEO, and I find that you can almost look at SEO in terms of SEO as an industry, and then you look at SEO as in SEO for the business, so the state of SEO within a business itself. And so an SEO kind of needs to have the balance of both, so to be aware of what's impacting their industry and also what's impacting SEO as an industry overall. What approach do you use to keep this balance in mind and have the latest knowledge of SEO as well as the latest information of what's affecting SEO in your industry?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that maybe differentiates me a bit from other people I have worked with or I have kind of observed is that I'm very curious on the business side and I have a deep interest in the business part of, the business I work in, but any business really. I kind of like quite a lot to read the financial reports from any random company you could think of, just to see, like how does the business is doing and like which kind of profit units they have and which ones are not doing so well and stuff like this. Because I feel that gives me quite a competitive advantage, to understand like what's going on in a general industry or in general in a business. So that is something that I do, and I don't think it's strictly related to SEO. And to be honest, like when I tell this to people, they are usually a bit surprised because it's not a requirement per se, but I think it's a great thing to do. And I mean, it's more like a hobby of mine. And then when it comes to SEO, I think, luckily enough, we have a very solid team that it's kind of always looking at things internally and externally. And I'm not talking only about kind of SEO managers, let's say, but also developers, product managers, marketers, etc., etc. We tend to get quite a lot of input from them as well on what they read. And just to say an example, yesterday night which was Sunday, by the way, some of our developers shared the Yandex leak of their source code in one of our channels. So that shows they are kind of interested, in this kind of things. And I think, I keep I keep informed as much as I can. I don't think I am that informed SEO wise as previously. Like, I think many years ago I used to read quite a lot more, but I think now I keep informed for the things that are relevant to me and to the business on the SEO front, and try to avoid a bit the noise, because there is also a risk in I think in any industry to read too much, and that there is a kind of a minimizing return after a certain point where you just go down a rabbit hole that leads nowhere.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. And that's one of the reasons why I asked the question, because I always like to differentiate it between, okay, you need to have a certain awareness of the latest information within SEO as an industry, but the SEO that one carries out is very much dependent on the SEO of the business that they're in. So let's say for example, an international business, they pretty much will need to know about hreflangs. I don't know, let's say Google have a latest update on hreflangs implementation. So that is something that's pertinent to them. Let's say local SEO might not be very pertinent to them, because their industry, they're more international based, and that's what they consider. So the SEO that one carries out, one has to consider the industry that they're in and the business, the state of the business that they're in. So it's very interesting you have that response for it. In terms of, let's go into Yandex ranking factor. Do you see this as something that is even important to you? Like, I know you mentioned you came across it via a Slack channel, but is it something that's pertinent to your business? I mean, there are a lot of SEOs talking as though it's the latest thing in SEO and something that everyone should be aware of. But what is your take around the news of this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's more, if we're realistic, I think it's more of a curiosity than anything else, because I don't think Google uses the same one. So you could maybe you can discover new things that you didn't think about that actually could be interesting, and maybe Google is using, because probably out of I think there is 1,900 ranking factors, then probably there is an overlap with Google on, I don't know, 1,000 or something or more, but then you don't know which ones. And ranking factors is also a very vague thing, because it's listed in the code, but what is the weight and so on, it's really not that easy. So I would say in my kind of understanding, it's not that useful, more like a curiosity. Also, I think that from what I saw, the only part that was leaked was the front-end code. So it's not like the whole backend system with the crawler and stuff like this. So really quite a limited leak, in my opinion. I think it's interesting. I have downloaded the code. I don't know if that's legal to say, but I plan to take a look at it just for fun, really. But I don't think there is a real use case. I remember that, I know that we used to have a marketplace in Belarus, which had 50% Yandex traffic, 50% Google traffic. And probably if we still work with that business, it could be more interesting, because we could try a few things. But really, in my opinion, I always say that even if we had access to Google source code, which, let's say that this was the equivalent, you wouldn't really do many things differently than you do today. Maybe there could be a couple of things that you could try strategically, but I don't think there is that many things that you could do differently, because there is 1,900 factors, right? So how do you do things differently to adapt to 1,900 things? You cannot go mad and I don't know, send traffic to a page because there is a ranking factor that says that if all your traffic is organic, then you should like diversify it. I don't know, like there's things that are not like really that operational, no? So, but I found it interesting. I think it's fun, and it's an interesting theoretical exercise.
Yeah, I would only deep dive into it if I had a stake in it in some way. So if I worked on a site that's based in Russia, or if my traffic, a large percentage of my traffic comes from Yandex, then I'll be like, okay, this will be something I'm interested in deep diving into. Otherwise, I think it's always better to focus on one's business, and only take in what impact one's business directly as possible.
Yeah, I think the best way to put it is this is very much like a Google patent type of thing. Like, is it fun to read patents and like theorize? Yes, I think it's interesting. But like, does it, like, have you read many patents that change the way you do SEO? I think not, at least to me. I have never read one that changed how I do SEO. At least on a very like detailed level. So I think it's kind of, nice, but not really actionable, most likely for 99% of the population.
Yeah, agreed. Now, something that will most likely have a direct impact on Google is AI generated content, specifically ChatGPT as a tool. Now, how is this likely to disrupt? Let's start with jobs in SEO.
Well, I guess it's the $1 million question. I mean, if I had to guess, I always think that technology usually, like if you order jobs by value, from most valuable to less valuable, usually technology cuts always by the bottom, no? Like the things that are more repetitive, operational, low value, they usually die with technology over time. And this is not something new by AI, but by many things, no? Like automation and so on. So I think AI is just a continuation of that. The thing is that it has a much better wow effect. And I mean, I'm really impressed, by OpenAI's ChatGPT-3. So, for example, if I was either a copywriter focused on SEO text or a company that sells SEO text for a footer, I could be a bit worried personally, because that doesn't seem to have a very like kind of long-term outcome, in my opinion. I mean, it will be still, a thing, but I don't think, first, I don't think it brings much value today. And secondly, I don't think it will be a thing in the long run. So that is definitely a disruption I could anticipate. And I mean, I think it's already there in a way. As an SEO, and I mean, as a worker, let's say, where I think you can bring the most value is by doing what machines can't do and probably will not be able to do in the short term. The issue that we have is the gap between these two is narrowing much more quickly than you kind of guess, no? Because maybe, I don't know, you could automate, let's say, a program to check a database and see if there is an error in the data, for example, or something. So that's something that, okay, you kind of do, and it brings value and it's automation. But now, like, you could have an analyst almost replaced by doing some SQL queries. If you provide like the right prompts and inputs to ChatGPT-3, like you could do analysis work that you would need a kind of a person to do. I don't think that's the case, like realistically, like you would still rely on humans, but the point being that the gaps are closing much quicker than we anticipated. So I think the best way you can do, the best thing you can do as a worker in general is moving up in the value chain and moving closer to critical thinking and strategy topics rather than operational and execution of topics. Because let's say that I don't think AI can do an SEO strategy for a company to attack, I don't know, X and Y vertical in this creative way or something. But yes, I mean, if you do footer SEO text, like you're in a bad place, it's probably likely that you will get, if not replaced, you will not be in a very good position. So I think when I think of work, it's like the same with programming, like if you look at ChatGPT, like you can go there, or GitHub Copilot, you can go there and ask for, how to make a HTTP request to this API and whatever. Like these things, they are done very well by the tool. So if your job was doing this, then maybe you should be worried. But if your job was to design a complex backend system to store, I don't know, data and expose it and something, then you're in a good place. I don't think ChatGPT can do this, at least for now. So yeah, just try to, move up in the value chain by bringing more strategic value, critical thinking, and all of this. I think, at least for now, irreplaceable things, because ChatGPT at the end is a bit of a pattern generation tool that learns from everyone, which means it's borderline kind of, let's say, average in everything it does. It's like not super good at anything, but it can do everything mediocrely or something.
It's one of the biggest changes I think it's creating in the world of search is changing the way people think about search, just general users of search, and the way they what they expect from search. I saw one of your posts on LinkedIn showing how it could look on the right hand side. So like real time information being filled in with based on the question that one puts in. So I think users will almost expect to see real time information, right? But that real time information will be based on what they put in, the inputs, so the prompt. And this, of course, will impact keywords, which is where, what we play around with. So how do you see all of this impacting the way people search and what they expect from search?
It's very tricky. I was reading a thread from a guy that works at Google. I think he's the creator of Keras, which is the kind of an API interface to TensorFlow or something like this. I'm not very familiar with the machine learning types of tools, but he mentioned something like, AGI, artificial general intelligence, was always the end game to search. The question is if we're close to that or not. In his opinion, we're not close to that. I don't think we're close to that either, because to have a AGI, like, it's not just about what we have now, but like feeding that with real-time information and like things that go beyond what we have at this moment. But if we think about it, like the end game to search is something that replaces search, does exactly fulfill the same functions or even more, better, and in a faster way and in a more personalized way. And I think if we think about this, then, I mean, it's not that Google is going to disappear in the next 5 years. That would be really stupid to think about. But like, if you had a perfect artificial intelligence that could give you any information, any recommendation, any whatever you need, like, you would probably use Google. If not at all, at least way less. So I think definitely there is a point in which, the search for information could be done in different ways, and this kind of assistant topic, which has been tried in different ways by Google or, I don't know, Alexa, but really erratically, like it didn't make a difference, then it's more like a toy than anything else. Then now we have a new trend that clearly will be differently. If we bring a business concept of game theory, you don't, like, for example, when Uber and Lyft got into the market, it was not, I mean, of course they compete with each other, but each of them makes some marketing effort or some effort that makes the general market bigger. So it's not a zero-sum game. It's a positive-sum game. So I think, like, it's not that ChatGPT will take away Google's market share and will bring Google to zero, at least for now. Maybe it will take a small portion or a portion of Google's traffic, but it will create new use cases of things that you would never use Google for, in my opinion. Like, for example, coding. Like, you could, in the past, you could kind of Google some kind of problems you had with code and go to Stack Overflow and read some stuff. But now you can go to the tool, paste your code, and tell me what's wrong. Yeah. So, like, that's a new use case that you didn't have before. So I couldn't consider that, ChatGPT will end Google, at least not for now, because realistically, the things that Google does and ChatGPT does too is information. And I think it has been proven that ChatGPT is quite bad at certain types of information. It's not really reliable. Like, I've tried quite a lot, and it's really like miles away from being reliable to do certain things. But yeah, I mean, we will continue to see AI in search, and probably the thing that is missing at this stage is what is the UX or the UI for artificial intelligence. There is a few search engines that try to work with this. I think there is one called Perplexity. There is another one called Niva. There is a few ones, and each of them interprets the world of search in a new way that is very different from today. Some basically they do the search results, and then you click a button and they summarize the 5 top results, and you get a summary of 5 different pages, and it gives you the main hints that you might be interested in. Other focus, more like on just like more the AI type of thing, but providing links to the sources. Others try to make it more like real-time oriented by feeding it with the latest data. I think the UX is still being figured out. I would expect that in the next 2 to 5 years we will see a lot of activity until a clear winner comes. For now, it looks like it's ChatGPT. I have to say I'm using it quite a lot, and I think that conversational UI is quite interesting and fulfills a huge variety of tasks, but there is also many that doesn't fulfill for now, so I wouldn't be too worried yet. But clearly, like, if these things evolve substantially, as SEOs we'll need to adapt, and who knows, maybe we'll be a bit less relevant in some capacity. But being realistic, that has been happening for a while, no? Because paid search takes over more traffic every year. There is more searches without clicks. So I think it's not super new, but it could accelerate the change, I suppose.
Yeah, I think this could be what ties together pretty much everything we've been hearing over the last couple of years around conversational searches and voice searches, voice searching. I know that's something that a lot of people have been talking about for a very long time, and I think this could finally be it, what ties all of that in together and shows that voice search is an important area of SEO. Because I'm thinking from let's say a user point of view, if they change the way they search for stuff, like, because I'm thinking ChatGPT, stuff like Alexa and even TikTok, right? The way people search is, I'm finding that it's coming back to the platform that one is using. So if someone is used to Alexa, they'll tend to do their search via voice search with Alexa. Rather than Google. If someone's on TikTok, they'll tend to do their search on TikTok. TikTok is very much promoting searches, and it's very early to tell, but I am wondering how all of this will impact, if you like, traditional SEO. in terms of keywords. For example, are non-branded keywords going to dip whilst branded keywords increase? Because people will be more aware of what they're searching for whenever that future comes, whether it's 2 or 5 years from now. So yeah, it's a very interesting time. I think this is the most disruptive time in search, but I'm excited for it because I think it will lead to expansion rather than things being taken away. So I am all for it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, it's a time for, maybe like a shift, in the pace and in everything we're seeing. I mean, I could be thinking, like, for example, if you are searching for, I don't know, plumbers to do some housework and stuff, like, you still need a plumber, right? So, like AI cannot replace the plumber, I guess. So you will still need, like, to point, or like, I don't know, if you're searching for restaurants, the AI will also tell you to go to a certain one. So maybe, what we'll need to understand is how to get into those training sets and how to weight our responses in the best way or something, so that, because that's the main kind of lever we have. And stuff like this, I suppose, this kind of things will be fairly interesting to understand. But yeah, I mean, look, if your website is doing what is 2 + 2, I mean, it was in a bad place already, and it will be even worse today. Yeah. In terms of TikTok and all the likes, maybe I'm just a bit more like pessimistic here, but I have been hearing about this, for years, about YouTube taking over Google and now TikTok and all this. And I think it's a positive sum game. I think these tools, they create new ways of searching that were not used before. And I think, like, for example, it could be pretty interesting if I was a recipe channel to try to rank for people searching for Vindaloo curry in TikTok, because probably a lot of people are searching for how to do that. But I mean, we need to be realistic, and probably it's not like an end game. But I think evolving is great, and finding new platforms to get traffic from, it's great. And one thing that I think we are quite poor at doing in SEO is that we are very text focused. So like search, meaning Google or Bing or DuckDuckGo. Yeah. And I think, just in my opinion, we're not really like search engine experts. We're Google experts. And like, we don't know how TikTok or Bing search works. And I don't think many people do, but I think in the future it could be, that we need to learn a bit more of that, and our work becomes more diversified through platforms and so on, rather than purely Google focused.
Yeah. I think it's going to lead to marketers, SEO specifically, being more focused on users, websites, users that they're trying to acquire. So optimizing for users rather than focusing on Google, as you mentioned there. Now, let's move into frustrations within SEO. I'm sure there are many, but in your experience, what would you say frustrates a brand about SEO?
What frustrates? Well, I guess the easy one is the lack of results, no? I think nothing frustrates more than that. Apart from this, I think mostly everything comes back to that. Like, if you search the root of the issue, I think lack of results creates lack of trust, and that tends to be the bigger issue in SEO, because at the end of the day, like, everyone wants the same, no? Like, to have a business, to have more traffic, more sales, more leads. So that's the kind of I guess is the answer. if we were to check something more complicated, we could probably, find many other smaller issues.
So I find that SEOs, we're very much focused on hard skills. SEO, like we want to look into the technical aspects of a website or on page or off page or content or analytics. Rarely, well, these days I'm hearing more and more people talk more about soft skills. How important is soft skills for an SEO?
Well, I think it's almost or even more important than hard skills, because hard skills really are quite generic. If you think about it, I mean, it's not that every SEO reaches the same level of knowledge, but there is quite a standardization of the SEO knowledge in the industry. Like the way I do SEO is not very different than how you do SEO. Like we can have a different component on how we tackle strategy or how I weight content versus technical versus link building or stuff like this. But like in the long run, we tend to become standardized in those fields. So I think where humans historically we have been more different is in how we do our soft skills part, how we present, how do we negotiate. All of this is maybe what makes some people way more successful than others, because this is where maybe the creative point is kind of bigger. I don't think I don't believe too much in SEOs being massively better than each other and calling each other like, hey, you're the best SEO in Spain, you're the best SEO in Europe. Like, come on, like that doesn't make any sense. But rather, it's true that people that communicate like 10x better than another one can get 10x more resources and achieve something that the other can't, and so on. So I think they are very important, and it's what people tend to fall short on the most, I would believe, versus the hard skills where there is always a lot of effort put on, and people tend to upskill there, but where they should probably upskill is more in the soft skills part.
Would you, if I were to ask you, how should an SEO upskill their soft skills? Just very generally, what would you say?
Well, the easy way is by practicing. No, I believe quite a lot in doing the things, practicing, and then you will improve by doing them. I remember, when I was in university, I used to try to present every time I could in front of everyone. And it's not that I liked it, to be honest. I hated that because it did put me in an uncomfortable situation. And I can tell you, I did have, goosebumps every time before and so on. But really, the only way by, achieving that personal growth, is by doing it. So I would recommend everyone to just try to expose themselves to the activities as much as they can. Even I don't know, I mean, this is a random thing that came up, but if you are traveling to a random country and you have the opportunity to buy something, you can negotiate it, and you can try to negotiate it with a random seller, and maybe that will give you some experience by doing that, so that you can apply it at work. I don't know, it's just trying to find the right moments and places for that. But if you don't expose yourself, theory is overrated. I mean, it's always good to have some theory, but really soft skills are learned by doing. So just do it, like Nike says.
Excellent. I completely agree. And I think that is an area, going back to what you mentioned earlier about value, that is an area where every SEO can, and in my opinion, should focus on, because that is what is going to differentiate those who are very, very successful versus those who are, let's say, general or generic, I should say. Steve, the year ahead, what are you looking forward to this year?
Well, I look forward to the year in itself. I wonder what will come up in the general world. It has been quite an interesting few years, so I'm really looking forward to hoping to have no disasters. But yeah, I think more on the professional side, I look forward to seeing the AI topics develop. I'm quite immersed into them, and I'm very interested in seeing how this kind of leads, where does it lead, and what does the future look like. Trying these tools and these technologies shows a lot of opportunity, so I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, more like in related to the day to day, I think we have a few interesting projects at work that are very, kind of huge, and they will require a lot of energy from everyone involved. So that will keep me busy, I guess.
If you ever want to show a case study or talk about it, perhaps, I'll be happy to have you back on the podcast later on down the line in the year.
Yeah, sure.
Brilliant.
We plan
Thanks.
to. Sorry. Yes,
that's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that we plan to present a few cases this year to the Search Awards so that we get some exposure there. So maybe it could be interesting, to show them at some point after.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. Steve, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you online?
I think these days where I'm most active is LinkedIn and Twitter, so I would recommend those two. It's my handle is my name and surname last name, so yeah, that could be the easiest.
I'll have those links in the description for you. Thanks a lot, Steve. Have a good day, and we'll catch up again soon. Cheers.
Thanks to
Bye
you.
now.
Take care. Bye bye.